The two brothers were very close. Ever since they were boys, they did everything together. Igwe trusted Odum completely, and Odum helped his brother manage the affairs of the kingdom. Once upon a time, in the land of rolling green hills and shining rivers, there was a kingdom called Isoko. This kingdom was blessed with harmony and plenty. The fields were always full of healthy crops. The rivers ran clear, and the people were happy. At the heart of the kingdom stood a grand palace made of stone and gold, where King Igwe ruled with kindness and wisdom. Igwe name meant peace, and he truly lived up to it by keeping peace in the land. Igwe had a younger brother named Odum. Prince Odum was strong, brave, and clever. His name meant lion, and indeed, he was as fearless as a lion in protecting the kingdom. The two brothers were very close. Ever since they were boys, they did everything together. Igwe trusted Odum completely, and Odum helped his brother manage the affairs of the kingdom. When Igwe became king, Odum stood loyally by his side. He advised the king on important matters and led the royal warriors when needed. The people respected Prince Odum almost as much as they respected the king, because he worked hard for the good of Isoko. The bond between the brothers was strong, and everyone thought nothing could ever come between them. In the center of Isoko's palace was a sacred room where a special treasure was kept. This treasure was a glowing stone known as the heart of Isoko. It was said to be a gift from the great spirits of the land. The heart of Isoko was not an ordinary jewel. It held magical power that kept the kingdom healthy and safe. As long as the heart of Isoko was in its place, the sun would shine gently on the fields, the rains would come at the right time, and the land would remain rich and alive. King Udo and Prince Odum both knew how important this heart was. Every day, the king would visit the sacred room to give thanks to the stone's blessings. Sometimes, taking Odum with him to pray for the continued prosperity of their people. The kingdom of Isoko lived in peace and joy under Igwe rule. Villagers sang song in the evening, praising the wise king and his noble brother. Children played under the tall Iroko trees with laughter. Elders told stories around fire about the goodness of their leaders and the sacred heart that watched over them. It seemed that Isoko would remain blessed forever, guided by the gentle heart of the king and protected by the brave strength of his brother. By King Udo's side was his wife, Queen Nneka. She was gentle and wise, and the people loved her dearly. The king and queen were happy together, though they had one sorrow. For many years, they had no child. Still, they hoped and prayed that one day the gods would bless them with a baby of their own. One bright morning, after many years of waiting, a miracle happened in the palace. Queen Nneka realized she was going to have a baby. At first, she could hardly believe it. She had hoped and prayed for so long that when the signs finally came, she thanked the gods with tears of joy. King Udo was overjoyed as well. He lifted the queen in a happy dance and announced the news to the entire royal household. For years, the king and queen had been childless, but now it seemed their prayers were answered. When the people of Isoko heard their beloved queen was pregnant, they celebrated throughout the land. Women gathered in the village squares to sing joyful songs, their voices ringing with happiness. Some marked their bodies with white chalk as a sign of pure joy, dancing with clay pots and balanced on their heads. Men drummed on the talking drums, and flutes sang sweet tunes in the air. Everywhere there were laughter, thanksgiving, and excitement for the child who would be the kingdom's first prince or princess. Even nature seemed to join the celebration. Gentle rain fell that day, blessing the earth, and a double rainbow arced across the sky above the palace, as if the land of Isoko itself was smiling at the good news. Prince Odum also celebrated the news of the coming child, at least on the outside. He hugged his brother the king and congratulated Queen Nneka with a broad smile. Odum organized feasts and gave gifts to his loyal friends to share the happiness. But deep in his heart, Odum felt something else, something he was ashamed to admit even to himself. A small seed of worry and jealousy had been planted in Odum's heart. Until now, Odum had been the closest person to the king and the next in line for the throne since King Udo had no child. He had imagined that one day, if his brother had no child, he might become king after Udo. He never spoke of this thought, but it lived quietly in a corner of his mind. Now, with a child on the way, Odum realized that he would no longer be the future ruler of Isoko. All the attention and love of the people would go to the new prince or princess. Odum feared he would be forgotten or seen as less important. This thought made his stomach twist in envy. Odum tried to push these bad feelings away. This is my brother's child, he told himself. I should be happy. I will be an uncle. I will love this child like my own. And indeed, on most days, Odum managed to behave kindly and hide any sign of jealousy. He continued to help King Udo with the kingdom's affairs and prepared joyfully for the baby's arrival. But at night, when he was alone in his chambers, the dark whispers in his mind would return. When the baby comes, everything will change. You will no longer be special. You will be nothing. Odum would shake his head to clear those thoughts. Yet, they kept coming back like pesky insects that wouldn't leave him alone. Months passed, and the time for the baby's birth grew near. Queen Nneka was cared for lovingly by the royal family and the palace servants. She often walked in the palace gardens, gently singing to her unborn child and dreaming of holding her baby. King Udo would sit with her under the shade of a big udala fruit, discussing baby names and telling her everything would be fine. Odum sometimes joined them, bringing Queen Nneka fresh fruits or flowers, and he would listen quietly as they spoke of the child's future. On the surface, he seemed as excited as they were, but a storm of jealousy was quietly growing inside him. Finally, the day arrived when Queen Nneka gave birth. After a long night of labor, at the first light of dawn, the cries of a newborn baby rang through the palace halls. King Udo was by the queen's side, holding her hand. When the midwives placed the tiny baby into Nneka's arms, tears of happiness rolled down both the king's and the queen's faces. It was a boy, a strong, healthy baby boy with bright, curious eyes. This child shall be named Obina, King Udo announced proudly in their language. Obina meant father's heart because the king felt that this child was as precious to him as his own heart. The name also carried hope that the boy would grow to be kind-hearted. Queen Nneka whispered the name lovingly. Obina, my son. The name felt perfect. News of the prince's birth spread like wildfire. The whole kingdom of Isoko exploded with joy and celebration. People poured into the palace courtyard with gifts, baskets of yams, jars of honey, and colorful woven baskets for the new prince. The palace storytellers composed songs welcoming Prince Obina to the world. Villagers danced late into the night in celebration, and the royal palace was alive with festivities for days. A week after the birth, the time came for the formal naming ceremony and presentation of Prince Obina to the kingdom. Early in the morning, the oldest elders and priests of Isoko gathered in the palace. The baby prince was brought out, swaddled in soft white cloth, and handed gently from his grandmother to King Udo in front of all the guests. The king held his son high for all to see, and the people cheered loudly at the sight of their future leader. As part of the ceremony, the elders broke a kola nut, a sacred seed, into pieces. Prayers were offered to the gods and to the spirits of the ancestors. One elder spoke in a loud, clear voice, asking the gods to protect little Obina, to give him wisdom, good health, and a kind heart. Then, the high priest poured a small libation of palm wine onto the ground as an offering, saying, "Spirits of our forefathers, accept this drink and bless the child." Everyone responded with a heartfelt "Ise," meaning Amen, or so be it. Queen Nneka watched with a joyful smile, holding King Udo's hand tightly as their baby was blessed. Prince Odum stood by as well, clapping and smiling to the crowd, but his heart was heavy with complicated feelings. As the cheers rang into his ears, Odum felt a chill despite the warm sun. He realized that all he had feared was coming true. The people of Isoko already adored baby Obina. They cheered for the prince louder than they had ever cheered for Odum. In that moment, as he watched his brother proudly hold up the tiny future king, Odum's envy hardened into bitterness. He forced a smile, but inside, he was filled with resentment. His hands balled into fists at his sides, and he took a deep breath to calm himself. No one noticed the brief flash of anger in Odum's eyes, but it was there. Even Odum himself was startled at how strongly he felt it. That night, after the celebration finally quieted down and baby Obina was sleeping, Prince Odum lay restless in bed. He could still hear echoes of the people chanting the prince's name joyfully. He covered his ears, but the sound in his memory would not stop. Odum's heart pounded with frustration. He knew these feelings were wrong, but he couldn't help it. In the darkness, Odum made a secret vow to himself. He would not let himself to be pushed aside. He decided he would do whatever it took to secure his place in Isoko, even if it meant to had to do something drastic. And with that thought, a dangerous spark was lit in his heart, one that would soon grow into a flame of betrayal. Not long after Prince Obina's naming ceremony, dark plans began to take shape. Prince Odum could no longer ignore the jealousy and ambition burning inside him. He knew that as long as King Udo lived and baby Obina was in the picture, Odum would never sit on the throne of Isoko. All his life, Odum had been a loyal brother, but now envy had turned his heart cold and selfish. He began to think of terrible things that he would have never imagined before. He decided that to get what he wanted, he needed to remove those who stood in his way, no matter the cost. Odum did not act alone. In the shadows of the kingdom lived a woman named Akoma. Akoma was known by some as a healer and by others as a witch. She was clever but greedy, willing to use dark magic to get what she wanted. Odum knew Akoma from years ago when she had helped the palace with herbal medicines. She had been banished from the palace once for using forbidden charms, but Odum remembered her abilities. Late one night, Odum slipped out of the palace in disguise to meet Akoma in a hidden hut at the edge of the forest. Holding a lantern to light the way, he made sure no guards followed him. In that lonely hut, under the cover of darkness, Odum revealed his wicked plan to Akoma. "I want the throne for myself. Odum confessed in a low, fierce whisper. My brother has become weak with love for his child, and that child will steal everything that should be mine. I need your help, Akoma. Akoma's eyes gleamed in the lamplight. What would you have me do, Prince? She asked, curious and eager. She had her own desires for riches and influence. If Odum became king, perhaps he would reward her greatly. Odum leaned in close. There is a powerful jewel in the palace, the heart of Isoko, he said. As long as it lies safely in the palace, the land remains strong for my brother's reign. I want you to help me steal it. With the heart gone, the kingdom will suffer, the crops will fall, the people will grow desperate. My brother the king will seem weak, unable to protect his people. Akoma nodded slowly. She knew of the heart of Isoko. Many did, though few had never ever seen it closely. If the land suffers, she says, the people might blame King Udo. They might think the spirits are unhappy with him. Exactly, Odum continued, his voice cold. And while the kingdom grows weak, I will make sure my brother grows weak as well. Odum revealed a small vial of poison he had obtained from a venomous herb. I will give him a few drops of this in his drink each day. Slowly, it will make him ill. He will weaken and perhaps he will die. Akoma smiled, finding the plan darkly clever. But she said, what about the queen and the baby prince? Even if Igudo grows weak or dies, the people will expect Prince Obina to be the next king someday. Odum's face hardened. The child is just an infant. But yes, as long as Obina is around, I am not the heir. That is why we will also remove the child from the palace. His eyes glinted with a dangerous light. We must take Obina away and make sure Nneka, the queen, cannot reveal what happened. Akoma felt a chill. Stealing a magic stone was one thing, but kidnapping an innocent baby was another. For a moment, Akoma's heart hesitated. This was a very cruel act, but her greed won over her pity. If we do this, what do I gain? She asked, trying to keep her voice steady. If I become king, Odum replied, I will make you my chief advisor. You will have gold, land, and power beyond your dreams. But first, you must help me. Use your magic to make the queen forget the child, so she does not raise alarm. Help me steal the heart and hide the boy. Once my brother is gone, I will rule. Then I can quietly return the heart of Isoko to its place, and the kingdom will heal under my rule. The people will thank me for saving them and will accept me as their king. Akoma agreed to the plan, lured by the promise of great reward. She and Odum spent many nights whispering and scheming in secret. They decided to carry out their plan on a moonless night when the palace would be dark and most people asleep. Akoma prepared a special sleeping potion to pour into the drinks of the royal guards to ensure they would not catch them sneaking around. She also brewed a draft of dark herbs to create a spell of forgetfulness for Queen Nneka. Finally, the chosen night arrived. The sky was pitch black with clouds covering all the stars, and not even a silver of the moon could be seen. It was as if the heavens themselves closed their eyes to the evil about to happen. A hush fell over the land. Even the crickets and night birds were oddly silent. Inside the palace, most of the household was asleep. Queen Nneka had sung a lullaby to baby Obina and put him in his cradle. The infant prince slept soundly, snuggled in a soft blanket. The queen then retired to her chambers. King Udo was away that evening in a distant part of the palace, attending to a late meeting with some village elders who had come with issues to discuss. The king planned to check on the baby later, but the meeting ran late into the night. As planned, Akoma snuck into the palace grounds disguised as a maid carrying a basket of herbs. Earlier, Odum had bribed one of the kitchen servants to mix Akoma's sleeping potion into the evening drinks of the palace guards. By midnight, the guards at the palace gates and corridors had all fallen into a deep, enchanted sleep at their posts. They slumped against the walls, snoring quietly, unaware of any danger. Odum moved swiftly and silently through the quiet halls. He first went to the sacred room where the heart of Isoko was kept. The heavy wooden door to the chamber was locked with a golden key, but Odum had stolen the key from King Udo's chamber earlier, while his brother was distracted. With trembling hands, Odum unlocked the door and stepped inside the sacred room. There, on a pedestal of carved ivory, sat the heart of Isoko. It glowed with a gentle red light, softly illuminating the chamber. For a moment, Odum hesitated. The sight of the heart, pulsing with a warm light, made him remember all the times he and his brother had come here to give thanks for the kingdom's prosperity. A pang of guilt struck him. This stone had protected Isoko for generations. If he took it, he knew the kingdom would suffer terribly. He swallowed hard, his resolve almost wavering. But then, he thought of the cheering crowds calling Obina's name, and bitterness flooded back into him. Odum reached out and grabbed the heart of Isoko with a swift motion. The moment his fingers closed around the stone, the room's gentle light went out, as if a candle had been snuffed. The heart's red glow dimmed to nothing when removed from its pedestal. The air grew cold and still. Odum felt a jolt run up his arm. The stone was unexpectedly heavy and warm. And for an instant, he imagined it resisted his touch, as if it were alive and angry. But he held it tight and wrapped the stone in a cloth to hide its light and carried it away under his arm. Meanwhile, Akoma crept through the corridors towards the nursery where baby Obina slept. The palace was dark, with only a few oil lamps burning low. Anyone still awake might have thought she was just a maid on some duty, but thankfully, almost everyone was asleep or drowsy from the potion. Akoma pushed open the door to the nursery. Inside, a single nursemaid dozed in a chair near the cradle, having drunk the same drugged tea as the guards. The baby prince was peacefully sleeping, tiny fists coiled and his chest rising and falling gently. With steady hands, Akoma uncorked a small clay bottle and gently blew some of the powdered potion inside it into the air around the nursemaid. It was a spell of deep sleep and forgetfulness meant for the queen, but a little extra on the nurse would ensure she stayed unconscious. The woman sighed and slumped deeper into her enchanted sleep. Next, Akoma moved to the cradle and carefully lifted baby Obina into her arms. The baby stared and gave a soft whimper, opening his dark eyes for a moment. Akoma hushed him softly. She was not entirely heartless. A flicker of pity crossed her face as she looked at the innocent child. "I'm sorry, little one," she whispered, "but this is for the greater plan." Obina, sensing something strange, puckered his face like he might cry. Panicking, Akoma reached into her pouch and took a pinch of another magical herb, a mild dust that would keep the baby sleepy and calm. She blew it lightly over the infant's face. Obina yawned and his eyes closed again, falling back into slumber. Akoma wrapped the baby securely in a warm shawl. She peered into the hallway and, seeing no one, slipped away carrying the prince. In the shadows, Odum was waiting, the wrapped heart of Isoko in his hands. His eyes fell on the bundle in Akoma's arms. For a split second, he felt a tinge of regret. This was his nephew after all, his own blood. But he hardened his heart and nodded for Akoma to follow him. Together, they snuck out of the palace through a side door. Outside, a horse and a small cart were waiting. Hidden behind some bushes, Odum gently placed the wrapped heart of Isoko in a wooden chest and loaded it onto the cart. Akoma climbed onto the cart with baby Obina held tightly to her chest. The baby slept on, unaware of the danger. Odum took the reins of the horse, keeping the horse to a quiet trot. They left the palace grounds and disappeared into the night. Before leaving the palace area completely, Akoma had one more cruel task. She quietly made her way to Queen Nneka's chamber while Odum waited with the cat. The queen was sleeping deeply, tired from the day's cares and perhaps feeling the effect of the distant sleeping portion that lingered in the air. Akoma sprinkled a few drops of her forgetfulness potion on the queen's lips and forehead, murmuring a dark spell under her breath. Queen Nneka sighed in her sleep as the magic took hold. This spell would make her fall into a deep, unnatural slumber, and when she awoke, it would cloud her mind, making her forget that she never ever had a baby. With their wicked deeds done, Akoma hurried back to the cart. Odum cracked the reins and together they rode off into the darkness beyond the palace, carrying with them the precious heart of Isoko and the kingdom's beloved little prince. A silent wind picked up, as if the night itself gasped at the enormity of this crime. Far away, thunder rumbled even though there were no clouds, a distant warning of the trouble that was about to befall Isoko. The next morning, chaos and despair struck Isoko. When dawn broke, a maid discovered the empty royal nursery and the distraught nursemaid just waking up, confused and alarmed. The cradle was empty. Prince Obina was gone. The maid screamed in fright, which brought more servants running. Soon the entire palace was echoing with anxious voices. The prince is missing! The prince is missing! King Udo, who had just finished his early prayers, came rushing to the nursery at the sound of the commotion. He could not believe his eyes when he saw the tiny bed with no baby inside. He felt as if his heart had fallen into a dark pit. Frantically, the king searched every corner of the nursery himself, as if baby Obina might be hiding somewhere. He even looked under blankets and behind curtains, desperation in his every move. Queen Nneka woke to the sounds of servants running into the hall. She heard the distant shouts about the missing prince, but under the haze of Akoma's dark spell, she did not understand what they meant. In her bewitched mind, there was no baby prince at all. The queen furrowed her brow, feeling oddly dizzy and blank. She vaguely remembered giving birth the week before, but the memory was foggy and slipping away like a dream upon waking. By the time she hurried into the nursery to see what was wrong, the memory of baby Obina had faded completely from her mind. King Udo turned to his wife with panic in his eyes. "Nneka, our son is gone. Obina is missing," he cried out, voice trembling with fear. He expected the queen to collapse in grief or burst into tears, but to his shock, Queen Nneka looked back at him in confusion. Our son?" she murmured softly, as if she didn't understand. "What do you mean, my love?" "Our baby Obina, he is gone," the king repeated, taking her by the shoulders. Queen Nneka stared at the empty cradle, then at the king, and shook her head slowly. I don't remember," she whispered. "I don't remember a baby." Her eyes were glazed and distant. King Udo stepped back, trying to make sense of her words. How could a Mogra forget her own child? He realized something was terribly wrong with the queen. It was as if some dark force had settled in her mind, stealing away the memory of their precious son. Queen Nneka began to tremble, frightened by the gaps in her mind. Udo, I feel strange. Why can't I remember? She cried, tears rolling down her cheeks, even though she wasn't sure why she was crying. King Udo embraced her as she sobbed in confusion, but he was filled with dread. Someone had not only taken their baby, but had also cast a wicked enchantment on his wife. He summoned his guards at once, his voice booming with anger and fear. Lock down the palace. Find my son. Find who did this evil thing. The palace guards, though groggy from the magically induced sleep, sprang into action as best as they could. They searched every room, every corridor, and every garden in the palace. Servants were questioned, and the entire household was in an uproar. But of course, Prince Obina and his kidnappers were long gone into the night. As if this nightmare were not enough, soon another terrible discovery was made. A priest who attended the shrine of the heart of Isoko went to check on the sacred stone, as he did every morning, and found the door of the chamber wide open. Fear gripped him as he stepped inside and saw that the pedestal was empty. The heart of Isoko was missing. The priest let out a wail of horror that echoed through the palace halls. Many came running to see what was wrong, including Prince Odum, who played his part well, acting shocked and devastated. King Udo, already overwhelmed by the disappearance of his son and the strange condition of his wife, now felt a fresh wave of despair as he rushed to the sacred room. There, he saw for himself the kingdom's most precious treasure, the magical heartstone that protected their land, had been stolen in the night. How can this be? Who would have dared to take the heart of Isoko? King Udo cried out. He fell to his knees before the empty pedestal, feeling tears burn in his eyes. Never in living memory had such a sacrilege occurred. The king felt as if a part of the kingdom's soul had been ripped away in the darkness. Odum knelt beside his brother, putting a comforting hand on King Udo's shoulder, masking his own guilt. Brother, this is a terrible day, but we must stay strong, Odum said, sounding consigned. We will find whoever did this. I will personally search every corner of the kingdom for Obina and for the hearts. King Udo looked at Odum with gratitude and despair. Please, brother, help me, he said brokenly. I do not understand any of this. Who could have done such a wicked thing all at once? Odum's stomach twisted at this question, and he avoided meeting the king's eyes for long. He felt a pang of shame, but quickly pushed it down. He had to remain convincing. We may have enemies we do not know of, Odum said gravely. Perhaps someone from a rival kingdom sent thieves. But do not worry, I will not rest until we bring them to justice. Within hours, the whole kingdom of Isoko knew that Prince Obina was missing. The news spread from the palace to the farthest farms. Some awful curses had befallen the royal family. The heart of Isoko was also gone. Though this detail was first kept quiet by the king's advisors to prevent panic. But soon, the effect of the missing heart became evident to all. That very day, the bright sky over Isoko grew grey and dim. A heavy, unreasonable heat fell over the land, but no rain came. The earth, which had always been fertile and moist, started to crack in dryness. Within a week, the leaves on the trees began to droop and crops on the farms wilted as if a drought had suddenly struck. Queen Nneka remained in a strange, sorrowful daze. Unable to recall her own baby, the royal healers and priests tried everything to cure her mysterious illness of the mind. They gave her herbs to strengthen memory and performed cleansing rituals to chase away any evil spirits. But no matter what they did, nothing could lift the dark veil that had fallen over her memories. The queen sometimes wandered the halls of the palace aimlessly, as if looking for something she had lost, but she could never remember what it was. King Udo stayed by her side when he could, holding her hand and reassuring her, even as his own heart ached with the trouble and burden of a missing child and a grieving bewitched wife. To make matters worse, King Udo himself began to fall ill. True to Odum's plan, each day, Odum found a way to slip a few drops of poison into the king's food or drink. A task made easier because King Udo trusted Odum fully and often accepted a cup of spiced palm wine or a bowl of soup from his brother's own hand. At first, it was just subtle signs. The king felt more tired than usual, and he sometimes had headaches or a slight fever. He dismissed these as the result of stress and heartbreak. But as days turned into weeks, the poison worked deeper into his body. King Udo started to grow weak. His hands sometimes shook, and he felt cold even in the heat of the day. Courtiers noticed the king's once bright eyes were now dull and shadowed. He struggled to attend meetings and often had to sit down to catch his breath. The people of Isoko whispered that the king was gravely heartbroken and perhaps cursed by whatever dark force took his child. Many assumed his illness was due to sorrow, but in truth, it was Odum's secret poison that was slowly draining the king's life. As the heart of Isoko remained missing, the land's imbalance grew worse. Streams that once flowed freely turned to a trickle. A mysterious sickness spread among the people, striking the most vulnerable. Children were the most hardest hit by this illness. They developed high fevers and coughs that would not go away. Mothers tried every remedy they knew, herbs, cool baths, prayers to the ghosts, but the children remained ill. A few of the very weakest even slipped away to join the ancestors, which cast a heavy pall of grief over families. It had been many generations since the people of Isoko had seen children die of sickness like this. It broke the hearts of the villagers and filled them with fear. In the fields, farmers watched in dismay as their yam and cassava crops withered on the vine. Plants that should have been green and strong were yellow and stunted. No matter how much they watered the soil from their shrinking wells, the crops failed to thrive. In some places, swarms of locusts appeared out of nowhere, devouring what little remained on the farms. It was as if the land was cursed. Nothing would grow properly. In the forest, animals became skittish, and many fled deeper into the woods as if sensing a danger in the kingdom. The cows and goats that farmers raised grew thin for lack of food to eat. The milk from the cows dried up. The fish in the rivers became scarce. Everywhere, the people of Isoko felt the stench of misfortune. The people grew increasingly anxious and sorrowful. Many gathered at the temples and shrines to pray and plead with the gods for mercy. "What have we done to anger the spirits?" they cried. "Why has our blessed land fallen under this shadow?" Some elders suspected that the missing heart of Isoko was the cause. There were quiet discussions in the marketplace and around cooking fires that if the sacred heart was not returned soon, the kingdom might face an even worse disaster. Older folks recalled ancient stories that the heart of Isoko was tied to the land's life, and that without it, the land would eventually die. But who could have taken it? And where? These questions haunted everyone. Throughout all this, Prince Odum continued to play the role of the dutiful brother and leader. He took charge of many duties as the king grew weaker, reassuring the people that the royal family was doing everything possible to find the prince and fix the kingdom's troubles. Odum led search parties on horseback, looking under the guise of trying to find any trace of baby Obina or the thieves who stole the heart, of course. These searches were in vain, and sometimes Odum returned looking even more distressed, though this was a performance to keep suspicion away from himself. In secret, Odum kept the heart of Isoko and baby Obina hidden in a safe place far outside the palace, waiting for the right time to use or reveal them.